Halloween, everyone! Happy belated Halloween, that is. Sorry. To celebrate the spooky season, I've decided to take part in Matt Draper's One Horrifying Moment, a series where different YouTube creators take a horrifying moment from across media and explain just what exactly is so great and horrifying about it. Now, I think most people are probably looking at horror movies and, you know, some truly horrifying scenes, but I'm not the biggest fan of horror, gore and violence. But spooky, I can get behind. Now, you all know I could talk at length about Scooby-Doo, and I do, regularly on this channel. But since it's the 60th anniversary of the Flintstones and we've been celebrating it here, I thought we'd take a look at the Flintstones Primetime Halloween Special and see what horrifying moments they had on display. Oh, and this totally has nothing to do with the fact that this video was already written before I knew this collab was even a thing. Yeah, I probably would have picked this moment, but Scott from NerdSync's already done it, so go check that out. So let's take a look at this Halloween classic, The Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone. Wait, you've never seen The Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone? Well sure, it's not exactly considered a Halloween staple along the likes of Hocus Pocus, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and pretty much any Scooby-Doo ever, not that one. But I'm telling you, it's a classic. So in this special, Fred, Wilma, Barney and Betty win a trip to Count Rockula's castle in Rocksylvania. Whilst there, Fred and Barney unwittingly bring Count Rockula's monster, Frankenstone, to life by activating the experiment. Then Frankenstone in turn wakes up his master from his 500-year sleep. This leads to the monsters terrorising the hotel guests and Count Rockula kidnapping Wilma to be his bride. So where's the horrifying moment? Right here. So Rockula can't marry Wilma since she's already married to Fred. So he decides to make her a widow and kill Fred. Fred, who knows of Rockula's plan, is in the castle trying to stay away from him. But alas, Rockula finds him hiding in a barrel and goes in for the kill. Out of nowhere, a werewolf jumps in and frightens Rockula away, leaving Fred to deal with the wolf of the night by himself. Okay, so it isn't really a werewolf, it's Barney. Okay, so it's not really a horrifying moment, more of a spooky moment. Okay, spoopy moment. What do you want from me here, people? It's the Flintstones. Okay, maybe the original scene didn't look quite that scary. I may have taken some liberties with the editing there. This is what it originally looked like. Still spoopy though, right? But it's a fun, creepy tale with the Flintstones characters that really helps you get in the Halloween spirit. But something about this special bugs me. The characters of Rockula and Frankenstone are certainly not the Rockula and Frankenstone I remember. And what's with the title? The Flintstones meet Rockula and Frankenstone, implying that they've never met before. Well, that's not exactly true, is it? We're going to go back to the beginning, back to the original series in the Flintstones franchise, The Flintstones. The Flintstones aired in primetime on ABC from 1960 to 1966 and was a ratings success. Also during the 60s, monster movies were at an all-time high in popularity. Programming blocks such as Shock Theatre and Creature Features aired all the Universal monster movies as well as B-movie horrors from the 50s in syndication. This, combined with the British Hammer Films producing their own slate of monster movies during this period, meant that monsters were in. And if you want to hear more about that, check out my last video. Capitalising on this trend were shows like The Addams Family and The Munsters, both running from 1964 to 66. They were fairly regular sitcoms with a monster-themed twist, just like The Flintstones were a fairly regular sitcom with a prehistoric twist. Well, these shows were incredibly popular and Hanna-Barbera wanted a piece of the action. Now, it's pretty widely known that The Flintstones was a rip-off, homage, to The Honeymooners. And by that extension, they would attempt to homage the Munsters and the Addams Family. And in the 5th season of the Flintstones, Hanna-Barbera introduced us to the Gruesomes. This monster-themed family became the Flintstones and the Rubble's neighbours. They had a couple of appearances in the series and one brief appearance in the Pebbles and Bam Bam Show spin-off, but they never really seemed to catch on. After the end of the series, it seemed Hanna-Barbera was able to scratch their monster sitcom itch when the Addams Family appeared in an episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies, which eventually led to its own animated series in 1973. The Flintstones, however, ended their primetime run in 1966 and would not return to television until 1971 with the aforementioned spin-off. Throughout the 70s and 80s, the Flintstones had many spin-offs. However, rather than being shown in primetime and being aimed at the whole family, they would be moved to Saturday mornings and aimed almost entirely at children. In one of these spin-offs, the Fred and Barney Show, the characters would run into some more monster-themed families, specifically the Rockulas in the Blood Brothers episode, which aired in March of '79, and then the Frankenstones in September of that same year. As you might expect in a show aimed at children, the characters here were incredibly non-threatening, and these spooky elements were played off off as more weird than being actually scary. And it was then, in October of the same year, that the Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone would air. And we would be reintroduced to these characters in this monstrous form. The key difference here, though, is that this special will be aimed at the entire family, being that it aired in prime time as opposed to Saturday morning. And this is far more intense than the average Flintstones episode. If we compare this Spoopier moment with one of the ones from the kids shows, you can straight away see that the colour palette is more subdued, allowing the scene to feel more threatening. These are not your friendly but kooky neighbours, no, they're actual monsters that want to see serious harm come to our favourite characters. There did seem to be a trend at Hanna-Barbera that if you were going to present monsters to children, you did need to tone them down and make them more silly so as not to scare kids. And if you did want to do something scary, you had to find a way to pull the rug out, or should I say, pull the mask off at the end. But here in primetime, they didn't have that problem. Sure, children would be watching, but alongside their parents at Halloween. Here they were able to keep the real monsters and have them alongside the more spooky tone. As such, the characters featured here were completely different characters altogether, being much more closer to the namesakes of Count Dracula and Frankenstein's monster than someone found on the Munsters. The special setting is in Rockula's castle in Rocksylvania, a clear Stone Age-ifying of Count Dracula's castle in Transylvania, a setting taken from both the original novel and the 1931 film. And the Count Rockula present in this moment seems to take a lot of influence from Bela Lugosi's portrayal. But strangely, this moment shows us that Rockula has a fear of werewolves. Now this is pretty interesting, since in the original novel, Dracula is able to shapeshift into a wolf, meaning technically he's sort of already a werewolf himself. And while the original 1931 film did feature him changing into a wolf and chasing Dr. Seward on the lawn, this happens off screen, and much more emphasis is placed on him becoming a bat. Another reason that perhaps makes it interesting is when Rockula appeared on the new Fred and Barney show, he had a werewolf as a pet, although it's more likely a reference to the film Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which features the Wolfman and Dracula facing off against each other. The original 1931 film also popularised the trope of Dracula entering from the balcony, and this plays on that when earlier in the special Rockula tells Frankenstone that he needs to prepare for his grand entrance, and subsequently enters through the balcony. In addition to this, the names Rockula and Frankenstone have been used in the franchise many times before, referencing the iconic monsters, and so this version of the characters have a lot more in common with that idea than the ones featured in the new Fred and Barney show. However, there are even more versions of the characters. Well, at least there are of Frankenstone. The following year, we'd be introduced to 2 more versions of the Frankenstones from across Saturday morning television and more primetime specials. Following the success of previous primetime specials such as Little Big League and of course the Flintstones Meet Rockula and Frankenstone, NBC commissioned a series of specials to air across the next year, finally allowing the Flintstones to return to their more adult-centric roots, if only briefly. The first of these new specials airs in September of 1980, The Flintstones' New Neighbours, featuring a brand new version of the Frankenstones moving in next door to Fred and Wilma. The Frankenstones in this special at first glance appear to be incredibly similar to the ones featured in the new Fred and Barney show, although for some reason everyone other than Frank's name's been changed. The wife was now Oblivia instead of Hydia, which was now the daughter's name instead of Atrocia, and the son Freaky was renamed to Stubby, not to mention the change in the voice cast for the mother and the daughter. It's a bit weird, but they look the same, and you can perhaps chalk up the reintroduction of pretty much the same characters due to the fact that they didn't expect any adults watching to be familiar with the versions introduced the year prior on Saturday morning. Okay, so they've rebooted them slightly to introduce them to a new audience. Fine. At least we now have a clear, definitive version of the characters that they can use going forward, right? Well, not really. In November of that year, the Frankenstones would get their own segment on the Flintstones comedy show. And whilst Frank and his wife would remain unchanged from the new Fred and Barney show, that is, the same cannot be said about the children. So we've now gone back to the original names from the new Fred and Barney show. We've got Frank, Hydia, Atrocia and Freaky, and the new dog monster thing Rockjaw. But the weird thing here isn't the names. No, it's the fact that Atrocia has been aged down from a teenager to a child. And although she looks the same but younger, she does take on more of the weird kid role from Freaky/Stubby. But Freaky, on the other hand, had been aged up into a teenager and had been completely redesigned into an almost Bam Bam clone. He was now good friends with Pebbles, who at this point was a central Flintstones character who had had her own show and segment. I'm not sure if he was ever really used as a love interest. Was there a Pebbles, Bam Bam and Freaky love triangle? I don't know, but if there was, Sorry, Freaky, she marries Bam Bam. Oh, and everyone had a new voice actor, even Frank. Due to having their own segments as well as being regulars in some of the other segments, these characters felt the most fleshed out and well-rounded. It was nice to see here that Frank acted as an actual foil to Fred, getting just as angry as he would rather than being the more gentle giant of the other incarnations. It can sometimes feel that the creators of the Flintstones simply were not talking to one another. That they were all there at the pitch meeting where the Frankenstones were created and they all just ran in different directions. But in reality, a lot of these changes seem to stem from what was needed for each story. The new Fred and Barney show, a one-off appearance, two-off for Rockula, that originated the concept but didn't need much depth from it. Rockula and Frankenstone, an actual monstrous threat for a Halloween special. The Flintstones' new neighbours, introduce an adult audience to a family that has to help carry these new specials. And the Flintstones comedy show, be interested enough to have their own dedicated segments and give someone like Pebbles a reason to be featured more. So yeah, the Frankenstones, one of the more spoopy elements of the Flintstones franchise. Oh yeah, the spoopy moment. Okay, so there were lots of spoopy moments in the Flintstones franchise, but I do think that this might be the spoopiest. I can't really think of any other times that I actually feared for Fred's life in the series. Well, any non-dinosaur related times, that is. I've heard many people say over the years that due to its sitcom format, the Flintstones doesn't have near as much versatility as something as like Scooby-Doo. And while I agree with that to a point, I feel that this special proves that they can be taken out of their normal setting and be played around with far more than people think. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you can give it some sort of Stone Age twist, it surely counts as the Flintstones, right? Alright guys, thanks for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit that like button. If you want to see more from this channel, if you found this video through the playlist and you want to stick around and see some more things, hit that subscribe button and maybe ring that notification bell to be notified when I do more Flintstones 60th celebration. If you want to see more Halloween stuff from me, I did a Halloween themed episode in my series, The Myth Behind the Monsters, where we took a look at a specific episode of Scooby-Doo featuring Dracula, Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, so go check that one out. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Cheers. Thanks for watching Tube of Tunes. If you want more from the channel, hit subscribe. If you want to keep up to date with what's going on, follow us on our socials. Hope you liked it. Cheers. Well, okay, it was Barney.